Well, I just want to thank Shasta County Arts Council for letting us have the use of this gorgeous building. I just wish that the room was brimming, because the amount of information that's been shared today, it's kind of crazy, and it's like gold dust because it's filled with opportunity. So do you feel like connected with this world of opportunity that Tracy has and her team have shared with you today? A little bit? Because I'm sure that Nancy and Agatha, is Agatha here? Yes, Agatha, there you go. Between Agatha and Nancy, that they can always follow up with you. So if you have questions, because increasingly the role of county arts councils is to engage in advocacy. And one of the roles of Californians for the Arts is to help county arts agencies and the arts world in general learn about why that's important and how to practically get engaged, so that they in turn can then share with their communities how to mobilize easily in a sort of unfrightening way, but in a way that frightens everyone else into submission in order to gain public funding. So Californians for the Arts, you do such a great job. So experiences related to health are often determined by factors beyond the individual, such as environment, policy, or culture. The arts have a critical and accessible role to play in tackling community conditions. What do you think? Do you agree with that statement? Yeah. Thank you. I am Eliza Tudor, Executive Director of Nevada County Arts Council. I'm part of a coalition of county arts councils across California and part of a small leadership team that encourages all of our arts agencies in terms of how to connect with each other, and our boards of directors and our communities are increasingly diverse communities across California. And I'm here today with two colleagues, Katrina and Gianna, and we've been going on a crazy tour, which we'll share with you a little bit more of in a moment. But we've been doing a little bit of a work analyzing some of the the information that we're learning about the 19 counties that are part of the upstate region. So more about that to come. We gave a very, very brief land acknowledgement at the beginning, and I kind of feel like I'd like to dwell on that a little bit. When we started doing our Upstate California Listening Tour, we used a map that we found under the auspices of UC Berkeley. So we assumed, well, if this map from UC Berkeley tells us that this is the definitive map of tribal lands, then it must be so. But the interesting part is that we've learnt that actually tribal lands are First Peoples. There are so many more tribes than we could possibly have known about that aren't mentioned here, and that these are more sort of linguistic, more sort of groupings of linguistic similarities and correlations. So I wanted to kind of acknowledge that. It's always very sensitive acknowledging tribal lands, because who are we to properly acknowledge that which we have all but exterminated? So I wanted to acknowledge, and I wondered, because I will probably fail to pronounce these correctly, is there anyone in the room, perhaps yourself, who would like to pronounce these for me properly? Could you tell us how we should? Is that roaming mic anywhere? Where did that roaming mic go? Lovely. Thanks, Nate. Would you mind? Yeah. Marvelous.
Just the list on the side. Yes, please. If you could just tell us so the first two are commonly referred to now as the Pit River tribe. That's the Achamawi and the Otsagawi. You can see it in the northeast corner. They're referred to collectively as the Pit River tribe. Then there's the Klamath, which goes into southern Oregon to Nome Lackey, Shasta, Wintu, Yahi, and Yana. And you might also see Wintu spelt differently, and you'll also see Wintun depending on which tribal group.
Fantastic. And right here, right now, what is the prevailing tribe that you would normally acknowledge?
Yeah, we're in Wintu country.
Wintu country.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Fun fact, the Wind River Casino is a conglomeration of Wintu and Pit River tribal names. And it kind of sounds funny too.
Yeah. But not funny, ha-ha, just sort of curious and interesting and something we should all know about, essentially. Thanks very much. That was really helpful. So the California Creative Corps, what is it? It's an economic and workforce recovery pilot program intended to fuel positivity, regain public trust, and inspire health and safety across California's diverse populations. It doesn't take much of a stretch of imagination to understand why now? We've just come through a global pandemic. Who's heard of the Works Progress Administration, or the WPA? Brilliant. And those who have heard of the WPA probably know that from the WPA came at least 4 distinct programs that put artists previously unemployed to work across America on some of the most extraordinary projects whose legacy endures today, artists across all disciplines. This program, the California Creative Corps, was a little inspired by that. And it's interesting that it comes on the heels of a global pandemic. And we know that the creative sector has endured but suffered. It's been devastated in areas of America, and it's no surprise that we would connect this with the idea of regaining public trust and inspiring health and safety across our diverse populations. So the WPA was formed on the heels of the Great Depression in the mid-1930s and endured all the way through to the mid-1940s and the Second World War. So the idea is, and this is where it gets really exciting, generally speaking, historically, California Arts Council has, when it spends down its, compared to other states, meager funds to support the arts and invest in the arts, usually these funds go towards organizations who then support artists. This is an opportunity beyond any other we've known that will put artists to work. Organizations, arts organizations, and social service organizations and units of government may apply to this, but they must state very clearly that they will be employing artists who will be at the forefront of creating campaigns to increase awareness around issues critical to society. That's pretty loaded, isn't it? That's like really serious. So what are these issues? We've been given some clues as an administering organization for the upstate region. We've been given some clues like, let's increase public awareness around water and energy conservation, climate change and mitigation, and emergency preparedness, relief and recovery, and disaster response. And I've just put there, including fire, even driving into Reading. What was the highway that we took, Katrina? Was it 299? 299. Like, it's so obvious. I'm sure that you can take any white highway in or out of Reading and see the devastation of fire. Civic engagement, social justice and community engagement, and public health awareness. So yeah, that's pretty weighty, isn't it? And I think that's why California Arts Council, as well as giving artists the opportunity to apply as individual artists and as groups of artists who have a vision and capacity to create their vision, have also opened it up in terms of eligibility to organizations that can help those artists build capacity. Sometimes an artist may have all the incredible, the artistic, the creative vision and capacity, but perhaps need a little help in determining the goals of the project over a longer period of time and understanding how to evaluate, what does success look like for me as an artist or for us as a group of artists. So sometimes working with social service organizations and community resource groups and units of government can be really helpful for the artists themselves. So you've looked at several maps today. This is the map of the California Creative Corps according to the State Agency for the Arts, California Arts Council. The yellow bit at the top is upstate California, clearly. These are the regions and the way they've been divvied up in terms of administering the funds, the close to $60 million that the state has given California Arts Council. So each of these regions has one, and sometimes two, depending upon the population density, administering organizations. Nevada County Arts Council is the AO, the administering organization for the upstate region. And, that's a lot of ground to cover. And we'll talk about how we propose to cover that ground in a moment. And of course, here is the map of, we find it absolutely fascinating looking at maps, like cartography as poetry in a way, because it shows how communities relate to one another and regions relate to one another in different ways, and why we feel this is important that we understand the relationship between communities and regions for the California Creative Core is that we hope it will inspire artists and community groups and civic agencies and units of government to work together in unusual ways that make sense for them. So we can work together as economic regions. We've just come from Eureka this morning, and the day before we were in Del Norte. We crossed over from Siskiyou from the night before. In fact, we got caught in some very serious snow and had to take an 8-hour detour, but I'll tell you about that later. It's a very adventurous thing. I'm just going to adapt this because I'm just like leaning down. How's that? Is that still good? Yeah. Great. Okay. So then, of course, we have the map of linguistic tribal lands. Tribes know no county lines. So while our listening tour has taken us from county to county, those counties might have relationships beyond our political understanding of them. The map on the bottom in the middle is really curious and beautiful as well, and it connects with the idea of what happens when a drop of rain falls anywhere in the upstate region. Would you like to talk to that, Katrina?
Well, of course, so if a drop of water was to fall, tracking where it would flow on out, not only brings forward, a sense of awe and appreciation of the landscape, but most of all, it helps us understand how communities relate to each other. Because obviously, if there's an upstream part of the watershed, it's going to relate, there's going to be some collaboration potential with lower parts of watersheds. I was curious here in Shasta, obviously we're in the yellow zone here, which is anything that falls there will eventually go out the Sacramento River and out the Golden Gate if it's not diverted and taken off somewhere else. Anything in the red flows into the Great Basin, and anything in the green areas flows directly out into the ocean. I was curious with Shasta County, though. Are you entirely within the Sacramento River Basin, or are you partially in the Klamath Trinity? Does some of the county line cross? No, so it's probably right up to the watershed boundary. Okay, great. Sorry, I didn't get a chance to zoom in on that part of the map. So, but still, no matter what, you're certainly connected to the North Coast region through the diversions from the Trinity over to here. So it's a relationship looking at the relationships between your hydrologic boundaries.
Thanks, Katrina. So again, this slide was simply to show there are so many ways for an artist or groups of artists or artists in relation to community groups, units of government, social service organizations, of dreaming up projects that serve your communities in meaningful ways and in ways that only you understand. Of course, the map on the right shows how we've best understood the relationship of our travel route when we go between these 19 counties. And the only time we got it wrong was in the upper reaches of Siskiyou County, when the road wasn't closed and neither was it. The gate wasn't closed, so we thought it was okay to go through until the snow. I know. It was amazing. We should have included a slide about that. What was devastating, actually, we took some pictures. What was devastating was here we were on the top of this mountain, essentially, just south of the Oregon border. And the snow lay all about in brilliant sunshine. And it was very fresh snow because, the storms last week. And yet, silhouetted against the snow were the absolutely blackened, ashen skeletons of trees that had been completely destroyed with no hope of regrowth. And this, of course, is prevalent across the entire upstate region. So all this connects. It connects with the economy, with our health, with our well-being, with the arts. We've just come off a big project in Nevada County, which saw us, since 70% of our county is state and national forests, and running through those forests are, is the Bear and Yuba watersheds. This actually, the relationship between forests, their history, the way they've been managed for thousands of years, and most recently in the last 150 years, and how we propose managing them into the future, has a direct correlation between the air we breathe and the water we drink and our ecologies. And so we created an extraordinary project which has caught the attention of legislature, and that's what we're talking about. And in a way, this is a sort of tool for advocacy in itself. When units of government, when public works becomes connected with the arts, suddenly the role and value of the arts in our community begins to make sense. So this is a pilot program. All eyes are upon us. It's the only statewide program of its kind to be piloted in terms of workforce development and economic recovery. Let's see what we can do to create the most extraordinary case studies from Shasta. And let's see how those case studies might be replicated in other communities that are suffering from similar challenges and have similar opportunities to engage. So here we are, 19 counties in upstate. That's 374 census tracts, 31% of California's total geography, but only 4.2% of its population, and 3 primary watershed hydraulic regions. Every time I pass over that word hydraulic, I sort of have to look nervously at Katrina. Hydrologic. I have to look to my left, here we go, a scientist and a creative working together, right? This is exactly what Laurel was talking about, and it's what we all need to do, all of us working across sectors together to try and solve some of these issues that are common to us all. Incredible precipitations, ranges, between 14 inches a year in Modoc, where we visited. It was one of the first counties we visited. More cows than people, I'm told. To 95 inches per year falling in parts of Del Norte. And then, of course, our elevation ranges from sea level to 14,000 at Mount Shasta. And a mixed economy of agriculture, timber, ocean fisheries, mining, tourism, and energy. You know all this, but we wanted to put together this sort of rather dry PowerPoint so that afterwards, when we share it with you, you will use these pages as little triggers, as clues around which to frame incredible projects in the arts. So in a way, we're kind of leaning in with narrative and data that can be used within your cases for support when we open up the proposals, the guidelines, in the early part of next year. So how on earth are we get around the upstate region? We started with the idea of doing a listening tour and visiting every 19 counties. How many are we on today? Is it the 14th today? Yeah, I think it's around the 14th. And even though there are only 19 counties, I think we're going to do about 21 listening sessions, because there are some really obscure parts of counties that really need to be heard and can't necessarily get across this summit or this river system in order to meet us in the dark in another part of the county. So we're trying to be aware of that. What we want to do is listen to the degree that the input that you give as individual communities will impact the way we write our grant guidelines. We know that upstate California is different from every other region. There are things that we have in common with one another that are completely different from the South. And so we wanted to hear from you before we create our guidelines. One of the networks that we're using to do that is our county arts agencies. We are the state local partners with the California Arts Council. And in order to be a state local partner, we need to have a resolution passed by our county board of supervisors each year, making us essentially the most accountable arts agency in our county. All eyes are upon us, and it's a network of extraordinary agencies who are among the most self-aware, I would say, in California in terms of our understanding of how far we need to go to really, really support our diverse populations. So we're going to be looking at a new tool for evaluating the relative health of communities around California today. It's called the California Healthy Places Index. It was developed by the Public Health, I was going to say Public Arts Alliance, that would be no. It was the Public Health Alliance of Southern California. Don't be put off by the Southern California bit. States across the nation are beginning to pay attention to this extraordinary tool and use it in their own states. So Utah picked up on it a couple of weeks ago. We heard while we were in Mendocino. And I've talked to grant writers across the upstate region who are already using it to support their applications for different kinds of grants in the arts. So it gets interesting. I will say, please don't be put off with it. Please don't be put off by the amount of data. We know that what we are told are the markers for a healthy community may not tally with your own lived experiences in Shasta. And you might look at the data and you might say, well, hang on a second, we know that this area looks like this because of this, that, and the other, that the Healthy Places Index doesn't speak to. And that's why we want you to challenge us, and we want you to create projects and applications which challenge the data where you see that there's something to be challenged and change to be wrought. So looking at Shasta County, would you like to really quickly speak to this? And this is one of our sessions that is slightly shorter than the others, because normally we have about 2 hours for this. We're going to try and wrap it up in an hour, so we'll be really quick.
Well, and most of all, this is actually a tool for us, because as we're going into 19 counties, we're trying to understand the different resources, different resource groups that are available, the physical environment as well. So this really is a summary that you know, but if we have something wrong, please do let us know. But understanding the different waterways helps us understand the different, ways, different parts of the census tracts that relate with each other and the different pieces there. The public lands help us understand how much public versus private land often affects tax bases, the relative amount of taxes that come in. So some of the potential there. College and universities help us understand the educational indices you'll see in a little bit. Do people have to go far away to get to college? Can they do it nearby? Tribal lands as well, understanding what the resources within the communities are with that. And then specifically the county resource groups too, understanding what groups you could collaborate with, who might have more details on the data and what's already been tried or what you might build upon. So as I said, please give us feedback as well on this.
Thanks so much. And the community resource groups at the bottom of the slide are particularly interesting. You can see ones that you're very familiar with because you're partners together with your California Cultural District, Redding Cultural District. So immediately this tells you, that's an interesting place to begin. But again, there may be others. And what we'd like to do is share this presentation with you afterwards by email. And if you think we've missed any key resources out, which invariably we have, in Eureka, they gave us an entire page full of resources. It was hilarious. All these, again, are clues to how to wrap your head around putting together a great proposal. This is a California wildfire history map. And Katrina has circled where on the map Shasta roughly is. The small green regions go back about, when I think about it, do you think the blue or the green are the oldest? Yeah, I'm guessing it's the green, isn't it? And then we think that the pink is the more recent. So what are we seeing from this map? Yeah. And what's it showing us, this map? This map is showing us that fires are getting larger. They're much harder to control, and they're becoming more and more devastating. It's the most beautiful map to look at and the most terrifying map to look at, but it also shows us opportunity too. When we look into the California Healthy Places Index map, which we will in just a moment, there will be a place where for every single community that we look at, which we look at by tract by tract, and we'll explain why that is in a moment, you will be able to find the racial or ethnic makeup of that particular community. And again, this is a clue to how you might frame a project which creates meaning and can help prove conditions in that community if you're an artist or an organization working together. We do ask you to look, we will ask you to show an awareness and acknowledgement of this, because there are such obvious correlations between a community's health and this. And you will be able to see for yourself. So it's absolutely fascinating. So today, though it may seem dry, we're giving you the tools to do this work yourself. As far as I know, we're the only one of 9 California Creative Core regions who are doing a listening tour. As far as I know, it may not be the case, but I haven't heard from among our fellow administering organizations that they're doing this quite yet, and it may be coming. We wanted to get ahead because our region is so diverse and so large.
And roads become quite impassable.
Exactly. Yes, I mean, we almost got caught out yesterday. So goodness knows what that would be like if we waited another month or two. So here we are, the Healthy Places Index, healthyplacesindex.org. We'll be giving you this link. This is what it looks like. When you look at that map, you can see 2 colors. You can see blue and green. There's dark blue, dark green, light green. And then there are some stripy areas that are known as exclusion zones. Those exclusion zones exist in part usually because the population is too small. I think the cap is 1,500, isn't it? 1,500. So if less than 1,500 people live in that particular zone, the California Healthy Places Index feels that it may be unreliable to draw conclusions, but that doesn't mean that you can't put together a grant application for a fabulous project based upon people's and community conditions in that exclusion zone if you yourselves know what's happening there, which you will, because you have lived experiences and these are your communities. And we're finding that wherever we go, folks are saying, oh, we know why that's an exclusion zone, et cetera, but it doesn't mean that those people really need help or whatever it is. So we challenge you there. So looking at that map, which color do you think denotes the best health outcomes? Green. Yeah, and why? More people? Green is a happy color. And what else? What other conclusions might you draw? Yeah. They're urban centers, aren't they? Metropolitan areas, high density population, more taxes coming in, more resources, more opportunities. Sometimes there might be that green area that stretches, you can't quite see it on this map, but there's a little pale green area that stretches all the way along the I-80 corridor up to Lake Tahoe. It's so fascinating, isn't it? So you get a high retail density, people living there, lots of communities going in. Fascinating. So what does upstate California look like? It's a lot of blue, isn't it? Those dark blue areas are what the Healthy Places Index described as communities within the lowest quartile of the Healthy Places Index. Those dark blue areas are the regions, the areas, the tracts that California Arts Council is challenging artists and you, social service organizations, units of government, to create amazing projects that create awareness for these conditions and perhaps a more positive future. And I believe that artists can do it. Do not let it weigh heavily upon your shoulders. Here's a closer look at the upstate regions. Would you like to speak to why census tracts? When you go onto the Healthy Places Index, the default, you can look at it by through extraordinary lenses, such as legislative lenses. You can look it up by, congressional districts, Senate districts, assembly districts. You can look at it by city, by county. The very clearest, best way, which is why the default falls to census, is through census tracts. But would you like to explain that a little, Katrina?
Well, the nutshell, a lot of the other ones that are trying to, if you're going to compare data over time and try to look where things have been and where they might be going again, this is a snapshot of the past. But to look for those trends, it's best to have something that's stable in terms of its boundaries. So census tracts generally do not change over time. They might change if population grows quite a bit. It might be divided into two, or if it decreases quite a bit combined. But otherwise, it's stable boundaries based on watersheds, based on roads. And so it just allows for that continuity.
Thanks, Katrina. And so here are the markers that the California Healthy Places Index has said these are the factors that determine a community's well-being, its health, its relative health. This is just a broad look at what Shasta looks like. So what you're looking for is where that small vertical black line slices through the dark blue. So you can see transportation's a real issue in Butte, in Shasta. Sorry, oh my God, I'm having cognitive dissonance. When were we in Butte? Remember, this is the 14th county. But use this. This will be absolutely fascinating for you. And when you have this PowerPoint, you can dive into it. Bear in mind, there are many census tracts in Shasta. And if you dive into any one of them, it will give you slightly different information about that's specific to those tracts. Do you want to speak to this, Katrina?
Let's just see if I can even read it on here for her. I think the biggest thing that stands out, now this is a generalization for the county as a whole, and given that there are so many tracts within this county, it's 48 total, it's worth knowing that then it's averaging all those tracts. So use that as a lens as you look at this. And we're going to look more specifically at a tract. But it does let you know within the county areas where the county might have to be scoring high relative to the tract. And thus there might be some other means with working within the county structure to help support that tract. Sometimes it actually parallels or can even be the worst tract we have found sometimes can even be worse than the county score. And that's simply because the data for the county is comparing to other counties in California. And the data for the tracts is comparing that tract to other tracts within California. Generally, overall, the scores were quite high for Shasta County. A very large range of per capita income, $18,000 from a tract around the Shasta Lake area, the town of Shasta Lake. And those notes are all mine trying to figure out the geography, by the way. So if I have it wrong, please let me know that too. And 51,000, the highest in this Texas Spring Roads area, which I wasn't familiar with. The lowest scores by the county are summarized there. And again, this is just sort of a glimpse for you to look at and see again for indicators of what are some of these areas, what are some of the topics we might want to look at. We're going to dive in closer in just a bit with a specific tract. Also looking at the overall population for Native Americans and for Latinos with the general county numbers as well as the maximums. And I've noted which tracts have each there.
Normally, when we do these listening sessions, we go into a little bit more depth. But again, we know you've had a wonderful overdose of information this afternoon. So we're trying to kind of whiz through it and just give you the overview and all the clues that you can then burrow into later by yourselves. So what we did was we asked our designer to do an overlay of county lines to census tracts. And this gives you a sense. So if you look at Shasta, you can see an incredible variety. You can see pale blue. I think there's some gorgeous dark green, which is a good thing, in the middle of, or outside Reading, I think it was. We'll go in and have a look at it in a moment, but you also see a swathe of dark blue, which isn't looking great, and you would know the reason for that. But this again is a clue for you to collectively look at these dark blue areas and think, what are the reasons? How can I use the Healthy Places Index to kind of burrow into and create narrative from some of this, and then create some amazing projects around it from through which artists will be funded. And you also see some light green areas too that are looking kind of more hopeful. Wherever you see light green, there's a reason they're not dark green. So you want to kind of go into those areas. If there, for example, if there is an artist or a group of artists who are passionate about a particular area and it's not quite dark green, it's light green, there will be something pulling it down in terms of the relative health of that community, and you'll want to be looking at what that is. So let's go into, I'm going to end this show and I'm going to go directly into the Healthy Places Index, and we're going to take a look around Shasta. Let's see, hopefully good, yay, great. So here we go. Yeah, I had it open, I'm so organized. So at the moment, we're looking directly at Reading. What I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom out a little bit to give you the Shasta perspective. Then we're going to zoom back in on where we are now. But just tell me, where are we now? Literally right now, where are we on this map? What color are we in? We're in the dark blue. Does this surprise you? No? In this particular area of town, it doesn't surprise you. So, well, why don't we start here? Should we start here? Why don't we? Katrina, do you want to look at this? I'm going to click on this. So what you do is you click on that tract, that dark blue bit, and immediately to the left-hand side, the community conditions that tell you what are those things that are defining that area come up.
Well, this is in fact the lowest scoring tract for all of Shasta County, the one that has the lowest overall score of all the indices. So thus, that's helpful for us to just start here and see and try to understand what's going on. What really surprises me about this one is, I'm sorry, as I'm gonna have that. I'm so used to my touchpad. See, I'm so used to, I got spoiled by it, and then these funky mouse people. Okay, here we go. I know. So please, but as we start first with sorry.
Change is good.
I know, it keeps us like, it goes to those other parts of our brain. I got it. Anyway, so this tract is at the 3.7 percentile. That basically means that relative to other tracts in California, there are 3.7 that have a lower score. 3.7% of tracts have a lower score. So do 100 minus 3.7. It's only 3. Well, so 96.3. Right? Did I get that right? Percent of tracts actually score higher than this one. So just getting that relative sense. So did I do the math wrong? No. Well, and we've been to a lot of places that have had some conditions, but the thing that is very different from what we've seen in a lot of other counties is the difference between this tract and the rest of the county. 50 percentile, we've been going to a lot of dark blue areas in California lately. So it's like, what's going on that makes it so different than the rest of the county? So let's look at some of those things. Let's start with economic. And within each of these, you can come down and you'll have areas. I'm not going to put any agenda of any indice on you. You'll have areas that you already might have ideas of people you might work with or projects or what feels even addressable. So I'm going to just show you how to use this tool, and then you get to have fun and follow what you're thinking about with it. But with the economic, we can see right away it's dark blue for all three of the economic indices: above poverty, employed, and per capita income. Let's go ahead and open employed since it has such a low score. Let's see how that compares with the county. The employment levels for this tract are at the 0.6 percentile. The county's at 39.3 percentile, so it's quite different. So you can look at this, and if you're interested in understanding more of why this metric even matters, you get the information here as well, telling you about what the indicator measures. It's the people aged 25 to 64 with a job. It describes as well how this is connected to health. So instead of reading this through for interest of time, I'm flagging that for you. But if this was something as well that you were interested across the board with others, I can go right back out. I can hold this. I can actually go to other tracts, and I'm going to come back to this one, and I can see how other tracts compare for that exact indice. It stays right on that indice, and I can look. So I can look at something quite nearby and try to understand, well, this is right next to here. What's going on that's making that different? But let's come back. Is there anything else you see as we're back in this tract? I know for me, when I was seeing what else really stood out relative to the county, in terms of education, I was curious why. You'll see it's quite different here relative to the county. We have that score from before, but you can't see it right here. But I can tell you overall for education, the county was at 46.4 percentile, and this track's at the 8 percentile. So again, quite different. Preschool enrollment was quite different. This is at the 2.5 percentile. But if you look at for the county's at 51.8. So what's something that might be going on? And we can go further in this discussion, but for now, I'm just wanting to flag how to use this tool most of all. Is there anything else as we go down that you're particularly interested in these indicators? Social is about voting and census reporting. Transportation has transportation things. Neighborhood, I'm just going to flag overall. Neighborhood gets buoyed quite a bit, raised quite a bit in its scores based on tree canopy in the area. We have, lots of trees. We, of course, have some thoughts maybe about tree canopy because you might have too many trees in some areas, and that's what's creating these really hot fires. So we're going to give some feedback about our thoughts for how this applies for rural communities. But I think I wanted to open up one thing about this track that probably is no surprise to you, but we have not seen many elements with clean environment that have scored low in the upstate region. And the diesel particulate matter, obviously this is an area that's being highly impacted by traffic coming through. That affects young lungs, all lungs. Let's understand a little bit about that. What might be done? What kind of awareness? As Eliza says so beautifully, what could artists do to help improve conditions around this issue? Anything else you want me to open up here, Halcyon? Are you curious? Looks like here, very low home ownership. Again, I'm curious as I look at that, what does that compare with home ownership for the county? 62.5 percentile. So very different. The home ownership in this tract is 11.9 percentile. Does this make sense on this tool, generally, how you can use it? And I don't know how our time is, but if you can direct Eliza, she's great at driving this too, if you'd like to see another tract.
Thanks so much, Katrina. You're the best. When I look at this area and when I see Shasta Arts Council, the state local partner for Shasta, right in the middle of this blue area, right? It makes me think we have a California Cultural District right here. It's you, it's here. Maybe one of your partners for the California Cultural District, for Redding Cultural District, might propose some sort of project that's actually harnessing some of this dearth of health. You might consider it. I mean, it's not often that you see this, as Katrina says, right in the middle of an otherwise sort of relatively healthy area. I just want to zoom out very quickly at these dark blue areas here. This is still Shasta here. This is still Shasta here. So just be paying attention to the regional opportunities, that the knowledge that this map gives you. When we were in Butte County, it was fascinating and awful to see. There was someone from Paradise who represented a coalition of several arts organizations who was with us, who was working hard on the campaign to regrow Paradise and community health through art. And the blue tract basically followed the edges of the canyon through which the fire, careered. It's heartbreaking to see. So there's so much work to be done, and instantly you can see the role that arts could play. Similarly, we drove through Greenville between Plumas and Lassen County, which burnt down less than a year ago, wasn't it? Less than a year. And, you're talking about a town that's been similarly leveled. It's devastated, apart from a few buildings, such as the school, thankfully. So what we found in the middle of Greenville, without intentionally seeking it out, was the regrowth of a new community hub, which was basically a collection of oddball trailers that had been plastered with public art and the most gorgeous gardens and kind of really hip and really cool. There was a trailer that was selling burgers, and people were naturally coming to this little kind of almost like a village green, as we would say, a community hub. And these individuals were basically redefining community, redefining how they felt that Greenville should be rezoned and should regrow. Such a sort of story of resilience. Gianna, you have that video on your phone. We interviewed this amazing artist who just happened to be there when we were driving through this devastated area, who spoke to us a little bit. So we'll be sharing all this. We've created a website which is developing by the day. We've created a Facebook page. We're a little bit behind posting for the last couple of counties that we've been. That will be updated in the next couple of days. So you'll see our post about you. And we'll post that video there too. So I think that's given you enough of an idea of how to use the Healthy Places Index. Just to say, I know Katrina went into this, but I'm just going to again show you how to burrow down and capture copy or narrative that will be helpful in your application. So let's click on that. You see where it says low income homeowner, severe housing cost burden. If you click on that little black arrow there, it will open it up, tell you how it compares to the rest of the county and the rest of the state. And then it'll tell you the why. What is the connection of health to this? All residents should be able to afford adequate housing without giving up healthy food, medical care, or other necessities, or accepting unsafe housing conditions. High housing costs and housing instability associated with increased stress and depression, communicable diseases like tuberculosis, and decreased children's well-being and educational outcomes. It's shocking, and this piece of copy here, if you as a creative community could create a project around which awareness sprung that could somehow dial in solutions for the future, this would be so strong, so powerful. So we encourage you to think like that. So I'm going to go back now quickly because we want to open it up to you. And let's click here. There we go. And then I'm going to zoom back along here to where we were. And here we go. Da, da, da. Right. Okay. So what are some of the factors? This is a listening tour. This is a listening session. What you share with us now will help inform the guidelines that we create through which you apply for funding. So some of the factors that might determine how much a county or region will be apportioned. Well, if you divide up the close to 3.4 million, which is how much we have for the upstate region to go into the pockets of artists and organizations working with artists, it would be about 170 or 180,000 per county. So we could do it like that. That would certainly be easiest for us. But how about we also look at the county density of blue areas or health outcomes? How about we look at county population, its geographic size, its tribal and ethnic considerations and composition? We will be looking at racial and cultural equity within this picture. We already know it matters, and we encourage you to as well. We'll be, of course, regardless of anything, be looking at the overall proposal strength. We're going to be looking at the likelihood that your proposal will turn into a project that can become a case study that California as a state can be proud of, that communities across the other side of America or elsewhere in the world could use it. How replicable is it? Be thinking about this as artists. How will I know if my project is successful? How am I going to document it? So that we can shine a light on it, shine a light on you, and for it to be used elsewhere. And then again, this is a regional opportunity. Very often grants are available restricted to counties. This is the reason we show you maps of watersheds and transport routes and the relative proximity of communities to one another and economic regions. And social determinants are for you to then tell us, well, for us it makes sense that we follow this watershed or the the way that fire spreads in our region, or where we know the homeless live, and the routes that they come in on. But so again, you will know best, and that's why it's important we hear from you now. So the other thing that we'd like to ask of you is, what is a meaningful size grant? Should we create, in large part, a lot of smaller grants to which artists can apply for, and through which we'll develop capacity for those artists? Maybe you want us to create grants for residencies between artists and organizations. Maybe there are empty storefronts that they can inhabit for a year and be paid to create something of beauty and innovation in. Maybe there are partnerships between organizations and groups of artists that require greater funding. What is that sweet spot? You tell us. If you can't think of it, because I'm putting you on the spot right now, don't worry. You just need to let Nancy or Agatha know, give your feedback later, and then Nancy and Agatha can feed back to us. We will be funding cross-county regional size grants as well. And we're going to be looking at, how big do those grants need to be? What are the smallest and the biggest kinds of grants that will make, have real meaning for your region? So I'd like to kind of turn it to you, because we're a small group, which is great. I don't think we need to divide into groups, but let's hear some of your ideas. What's your thinking when you look at this? And are any of you inspired? And what we'll do is we'll use the mic. Nancy, thank you. You were nodding at me a lot. Pass the mic to that guy there. It'd be great to get the camera on you too. Please.
My name is Carlo Henry. And
actually, if you could speak a little bit better into the mic. Yeah, great, because we want to capture you, and you're being live streamed.
All right. My name is Carlo Henry, and I'm the founder of the Art Hunger. What we do is the Art Hunger is a project that collaborates with organizations, businesses in town to support and nurture the local artist community. And what I see here is what we're so aware, what we've been aware of for 2 or 3 years, that there's not a lot of economic support to local artists, emerging artists. And that's what we've been doing and dealing with since we started. So this is great that there's going to be opportunity to get funding to keep supporting local artists and to create something.
Did you say you were on the board of directors for Shasta County Arts Council?
Yes, I'm the vice president.
So you are in such trouble.
Yes, I am.
We expect you to be dreaming up things. So our county arts agencies across the 19 counties will sort of be like mini consultants for us. Instead of us, Nevada County Arts Council, determining who should be funding in your communities, it will be you. So Nancy and Agatha will be looking at how to develop a peer review panel, and Shasta Arts Council will be on that panel. We will be on that panel, but also a couple of community members too. So we'll have to work out a process together. So although Shasta Arts Council won't per se be responsible for putting together any applications, because it will be a conflict of interest, Shasta Arts Council will be deeply encouraging awareness for this opportunity and all its cross-sector opportunities and the innovation it might afford and the relief it might bring. So I hope that you'll be having conversations at the board level and then disseminating that out, bringing your community back together, have Zoom calls together, have special interest groups meet with other sectors as well. I'm really excited. You're in such trouble.
I would really, it would be so exciting that an SLP in a county, right, a state and local partner would have the opportunity to re-grant. Agatha and I have talked a lot about when we've had funds that have been given to us to re-grant. We feel we have a much more impactful opportunity at that level to be able to take money and push it out into our artists, both organizations and individuals in the community. And it's just like a school block grant. When you get a chunk of money that's given to a local district to disseminate amongst their programs in a school, it makes such a difference rather than to put a constraint on it and say, it can only be done for this little portion of something. Mm-hmm. So I would encourage that all of the SLPs have that opportunity to put themselves in a position of re-granting out to their own communities, because I think I look at that map and think about where that's centered, and it is downtown. But I also know that map doesn't represent what is going on downtown for us. There's a lot of, there are not a lot of family units in the area, but there's a lot of new housing development that's going. The redevelopment of downtown isn't representative of that map. And so those of us in this room know what strides we've made, what huge strides we've made over the last 10 years in the downtown area. So to be able to take the lead in that in terms of our own community and putting it out there, I think it's going to benefit the community in a much larger capacity, because we know where the money needs to go. Carla's absolutely right. We know where the money needs to go, and we would love the opportunity to be a part of that decision-making process.
Absolutely. And that's where the state local partner, you, Nancy, as Shasta Arts Council, being on our one of the consultants for this project, you already are. And the fact that you'll be running the peer review panel for your community. The only thing California Arts Council is very specific about is that it's the administering organization actually writing the checks. Absolutely. So you, in many ways, in a sort of high-level way, it is almost like re-granting, because we're placing you responsible. We're issuing you with a delicious challenge because you know your communities. And the only thing you don't need to do is write the checks. But you're very much responsible. So this is a wonderful opportunity. And I think you wanted to speak to...
Well, mine's more of a testimony. My name's Melody Revnick. It just sounds so deep here. Anyways, fairly new to Redding. I'm a photographer, have been most of my life. Came from a very rich state for the arts. And coming into Redding was kind of hard as an artist when you first move in. What Carlo's done with Art Hunger has been just fabulous. He brought a lot of vigor and art into downtown area, and just now getting involved at the Art Council. And it's pretty exciting what they're doing here in Redding in the arts, and very encouraging as an artist. That's it.
I'm excited too, and hope that Carlo will go away and start thinking. I can feel that he's already plotting.
I'm ready to take him out for a beer and
exactly. Go for it, girl.
No, but he's made just a huge impact here.
Yeah.
All right.
Okay, you are hereby challenged, Carlo. Yeah. Anyone else? Anyone who hasn't spoken? Great. And if you could say your name and any affiliation as well, it's helpful.
My name is Brandon Bauman, and I own Redding Performing Arts Center. So I'm not a nonprofit or a for-business entity. Nancy's been doing a ton of work with Shasta Arts Council, and we have a theater coalition that gets together monthly and meets, and which has been really awesome, and loving seeing the theaters come together and working as in a collaborative way. It's been really beautiful. But I think an area that my background's in music education, and I'm a music teacher. And I think one thing as putting on local theater that I find challenging is collaborating with musicians, because just like if we wanted to do a live performance, being able to have the funding to pay for live pit musicians, once you get, all your licensing costs covered. And if you have a small venue, you can only sell so many tickets. And so I think finding some ways that we can provide space for musicians and have money set aside to be able to pay those musicians, just because sometimes in like a musical theater budget, it's not there to have live musicians. And then we have the option of our tracks.
What was your name again?
Brandon Bauman.
How do you? Brandon.
Yeah.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Brandon, so now what you need to do is go one step further with your thinking, because you've determined your need. Now you need to marry that need with something you see in the Healthy Places Index, and then create a case for support around it, and be thinking all the time, how can this project gather speed and draw attention from the community that's very positive in such a way that, for example, the McConnell Foundation would want to come in and fund it at the end of the grant activity period. I know you have an incredible foundation here. It's been so generous. But be thinking like that. What are the other community resources, the resource groups? The McConnell Foundation was just one of them, that you can harness to perhaps create a little bit more sustainability for that once they've seen the amazing job that you're going to do within the grant activity period of this particular grant. In terms of what that period looks like, we'll open up in February or March next year, and then we'll run through the whole thing finishes for us at the end of September 2024. So it'll be a little over a year, and that will include time to properly evaluate and create the amazing case studies we'd like to share back with the state when they evaluate us as an administering organization. The overall aim is to do such a great job in Shasta and in the other counties that the state will have everything, the California Arts Council will have everything it needs to report back to the state in order that this is no longer a pilot program, but it happens every year. Imagine that. It's amazing. And then remember the surf regions as well. How can we keep that ongoing dialogue with them? And the more and more we work across sectors, the better. So be thinking that. So now you are hereby challenged. Anyone else? Any other sort of weird, fabulous questions, projects coming to mind? Just say it. And then hold it up so we can capture you for the...
Okay. I wonder if you could speak...
You could say your name one more time.
My name is Sky Schofield. I'm a documentary filmmaker. I work for KIXE, local PBS station. I'm curious if in your work or anyone else in the room, if you'd have some words or advice in working in communities that may not know how much the arts is good for them in their lives, and how to maybe broach that topic, open that door. Historically, not having as much art presence here in the North State, I think people may not know what art that they like, or that the arts would enrich their lives. Mm-hmm. I was wondering if you can speak to that at all, and if you've experienced that elsewhere too.
Oh, yes. I mean, there are communities all over the world whose desperate housing situation, their food scarcity, whatever it is, whatever condition is happening, have been uplifted in some way over time by the introduction of art. Often it's just accessibility. Is there a particular community you have in mind? Is it okay to share that? Just as an example, so we can sort of think about it together.
I guess there's been as much as there's been an anti-intellectual sort of sentimentality across this country over the last couple decades. I personally believe there's an already established avoidance towards the creative music and art. A good example would be several different live music venues being set up within my lifetime within the Reading area, and them being shut down for what might be seen as reasons that are not adequate to shut down a business. There's an aversion to music and arts and culture, I think, in this area. Somewhat. I don't want to cast aspersions or anything, but yeah, I feel like there's an anti-culture cultural sentiment in maybe more rural regions in California. I can only speak from experience.
I have a feeling you're talking from a political perspective, aren't you, in a way? I mean, I know that as an arts council, we're very, very strict about being apolitical and trying to create friendships and bridges across political lines. It's like one of the most important roles we can play rather than adopting a stance. And this is particularly important in advocacy. And we know that across party lines, have been different periods in history where every party has been supportive of the arts. And that's what we need to aim for. But I think to encourage you to look a little bit more deeply, look at the Healthy Places Index, find an area that you can relate to that is showing really poor health outcomes. And instead of thinking of necessarily bricks and mortar type projects that have or haven't succeeded in the past, think about how to provide access to what it is that you love and know, and how to bring that in a way that revitalizes and creates pride of place. During the WPA area, an example in the visual arts would have been the extraordinary number of murals that went up in places that were desperately poor, and then how, in working in those areas, visual artists created informal community spaces where the population there could practice art, sometimes for the first time, and how that caught on, and how that drew attention from other sectors in such a way that investments were made and revitalization began to occur. So sort of think along those lines. You are a documentary artist. Much of the work of the WPA, those artists, was about documenting narratives, documenting stories. Go forth and share the stories of those areas that you care about. And then maybe think about collaborating with other artists or going it alone. But you are hereby challenged.
I think our job as artists is to be on the vanguard and really show people what they really need in their lives, the options that we can share with the community. I hear you. Like it's challenging to bring people, to really make them participate in what we're doing. And maybe it's based in education or experience, but it is our job to keep doing the things we do and we love, to share with the community what we as in the community do ourselves as artists.
I love that you say that. It suddenly made me remember this amazing little program that Yuba Sutter Arts and Culture, which is Nancy's equivalent it's the only bi-county Arts Council in California. And for a brief time, I was the interim executive director post-recession. And my job in 2015 was to reopen those doors. And an annual event that we had, it was such fun and so cheesy. We would invite local leadership in government departments, for example, like the police chief, and then, some county administrator, and then, upstanding citizens in other areas of community life who you would never imagine participating in creative life. We'd invite them to an event once a year in which they invited all their friends who similarly weren't necessarily connected to the creative ecology. And that individual they were asked to compete. They had like half an hour to create the most amazing picture of the same thing. And it was hilarious and beautiful and fun. And what we found over time, what the agency found over time, was that those individuals who we so need to appreciate what we do developed their own evaluation because they had been drawn in and they were past the point of no return. They had so much fun. They suddenly got engaged. So that was just a very sweet example of how something got caught on in an otherwise an area where the arts were not thriving.
I just had a comment inspired by your question, and in terms of being visible, being valued, those kind of things. You know what we learned with COVID when the governor's office issued reopening guidelines for each industry, like under these conditions and this level of transmission and all that kind of stuff, your business has to have these safety protocols in place to open. The creative sector was not in any of the reopening guidelines, including film and television. And so sometimes we're so ubiquitous, we're so everywhere, right? We're in education, we're in nonprofits, we're in for-profits, that we're invisible. And so just stepping up and going, whoa, wait a minute. And the California Public Health and the governor's office created a task force, and we created guidelines, things like that. But it was a real big wake-up call for all of us in the field of like, wow, we have a visibility issue. So you're speaking to that. And some local strategies are even just inviting council members to your events. I know that we're also talking about project-based, generating ideas and inspiration for projects and to propose and things like that. But you can be doing that work while advocating as well, which is I did a project, produced an Arts and Prosperity Candidates Forum for a city council election in Ventura County. And I asked all of the candidates, what are your top 3 issues that you want to address in your tenure if you're elected? And they submitted theirs, and I got like a dozen artists together. And within about 15 minutes, the artists generated 56 solutions, and then we delivered them to them in like a hip hop poem kind of thing. I think they got it. But at any rate, that coming, even strategizing in your project development with the census tract and things like that, and reaching out to a council member or, that kind of offering partnership or offering creative solutions might be a way to double up on the advocacy visibility issue as well as get your project funded. So
I think that we are rural communities rural communities are faced with, as you guys have, I'm sure if you don't know, you've discovered in your travels, that rural communities are not just faced with BIPOC issues, but we're faced with poverty issues. And I think the poverty issue could be connected to the arts in such a basic way that when you have an educational system that basically puts the arts last on the docket, you're not educating children from the very time they're, starting their lives to understand and appreciate the arts. So I'm encouraged that Prop 28 was passed. I think that's going to help a lot. I think all of these different initiatives, all these different programs and opportunities have an incredible thread running through them that connect. And I appreciate all of you for connecting the dots and making this work. As a young educator, I remember when the Californians for the Arts was just starting, I don't know how long it's been out there, but it seems like I was, 23 when I remember the advocacy part of this started. And it has traveled so far and so vastly in this big state. So I applaud all of that. I know that the threads are connected. They're connected in terms of all the advocacy and all of the generated programs, but the threads are connecting in our rural communities specific to poverty and the arts and health, etc. So that will be an interesting thing for us to digest and create. Thank you.
And I will lastly just say, keep thinking of correlations. Use this map. Don't be afraid of it. And I encourage the board of directors and also your partners to be thinking in the next few months how you can guide these conversations that need to happen. So I encourage the board of directors at Shasta County Arts Council to become experts in the Healthy Places Index, just enough that you can put to bed any fear or sort of righteous indignation around the data you are understanding versus lived experiences. Keep bringing it back to your lived experiences and what projects you can encourage community organizations and artists to create. Here on the screen are upstatecaliforniacore.org. It's changing as the days pass. We have a Facebook group. Instagram is coming. That's the Healthy Places Index. And then Shasta Arts Council. And there's an email address at the bottom. It's info@Upstate Creative Corps, spelt CORPS, as in Army of Artists. .org. That's info@upstatecreativecorps.org. We're always available to you. Thank you so much. Go forth and create. Oh goodness, I don't want to forget you.
No,
yes.
That's okay. I just wanted to say, this whole day I've been kind of feeling like the outcast here because I'm more the cultural side than the artist side, being the director at the Historical Society. But something that Sky was talking about really rang home with me about how our organization could participate in these types of projects as well.
Yes.
We're about history, and my view of history is everything has a history. And if we have to tell the story of some of these organizations or businesses, if we have to talk about the history of a particular avenue of art or something like that, don't just consider working with historical organizations, because we can, although we have to do it from a historical perspective, we can add light to why things are the way they are. And, one of my viewpoints is that we need to be connecting the past to the present and the future. So we need to take the past and figure out, what caused things to happen and how it can have an impact on people today for the positive.
History is profoundly important and doesn't have to be fusty and musty. It's great fun, especially when we relate it to the future. And so your organization is going to be the most amazing tool for that. Don't sit back and wait for artists to come to you. Go out and start looking for artists. Don't think about just visual artists, although visual artists are great. Think about the digital arts, digital media, film, technology. Think about the literary artists, theater, musicians, and start having conversations and start generating interest around what you know to be of value.